This morning we'll be reading from the book of Amos. Amos chapter 5, starting in verse 21 and continuing on, in the fashion that we do. When we get tired, we'll stop. When I get tired, we'll stop. And I'll let you know that just drove back from vacation yesterday, so tired will come quickly today. I have rather gotten accustomed to taking out the beach chair and the beach umbrella and sitting down right underneath it and only getting up to cool my feet periodically. But I will say this, it was a great week. For the first time in I can't tell you how long, I did not burn myself the first day of vacation. So it was relaxing and it was refreshing, and I'll be honest, it was so nice to pull back into our home there in Midlothian and know our bed was waiting for us, and we were not greeted by the two cats. They were off doing whatever, and it was just nice. But I openly admit I miss that sound of ksh, pooh, ksh, pooh. But it was a crazy week, wasn't it? Seemed so much happened in our world, so much. What a week to pick for vacation. Now, if only I would have left my cell phone at home and not caught all those updates. We are so fortunate to live in the country that we do, where so much of our day-to-day life we just take for granted because we can. Many places in our world, working from sunrise to sunset in labor-intensive ways is the reality. And in most cases, we're fortunate. We actually make enough that we know where tomorrow's meal is coming from. But sometimes with that affluence, sometimes with that ease of life, other things begin to creep in. See, this was beginning to happen to the nation of Israel. And Amos, just a lowly shepherd, gets a message from God for his nation. And, sometimes news isn't great. Sometimes when you have to convey something to someone, it's not the news you would like to give them. You ever have that experience? It happens to me periodically. I know my wife doesn't sit around the house looking for stuff to break to let me know that there is a problem as soon as I come home. But lo and behold, life is life and things break down. And a light isn't working right. Or the current problem that we're experiencing, the one toilet just likes to run. And it starts running whenever it feels like it. And it stops again whenever it feels like it. It's not a major thing, but it's that one more issue. You see, Israel was beginning to find itself in that position. They had broken apart from each other. There was a king in the north, there was a king in the south, and life was still kind of good. In fact, life was really good. The kings were fairly stable. The economy was doing well. For the most part, people were prosperous. And yet, not everything was perfect. You see, they were experiencing some other issues. Life became so simple that they started to forget who provided them their standard of living. and their hearts and eyes started being other gods started to become appealing to them. Now, it wasn't gods in the sense of God, but it was stuff. Idolatry had started to set in. They really liked things. You know, things. Now, this is only an Andrew Jackson. Most like things that are a little more spectacular. You know, grants. They're something. And it's been a while since I've really looked into the face of anything more prestigious than Grant. But sometimes our hearts begin to be moved in other places. That led to extravagance. You know extravagance? I remember several years ago, and yes, we aren't forgetting Amos. We will get there. I remember one time, many years ago, being in Memphis and having the opportunity to tour Graceland. And we were told about one of Elvis Presley's cars. Now, this was a big deal. I mean, I was raised in a house where my mama just loved Elvis Presley. I knew most of his songs. And while I couldn't sing, I did my best to cover each and every one of them growing up. So hearing about his life and what all was going on was really, kind of special. And I remember hearing about his one vehicle that had all of the instrumentation. You know that little, I'm dating myself. I remember seeing my parents' cars that the instrumentation had just a little thin, I guess it was aluminum, I don't know what it was, right around the little blocks there, telling you what your temperature was and the speed. Well, we were told that all of that was 24 karat overlay in this particular vehicle. Even the stick shift was 24 karat gold. And I remember thinking then, why? What extravagance? To what end? What is the purpose? Extravagance had set into Israel. And too often, once extravagance sets in, division sets in. Because the next door neighbor barely has a car, much less a 24 karat plated bumper. Problems begin to happen where those who have are looking down on those who do not. This is the time that Amos finds himself bringing a word to the people of Israel. And here in chapter 25, starting in verse 21, he cuts to the point. He's not skirting the issue anymore. He is not trying to illustrate it any longer. He has cut to the chase, and here is his message. God speaking, I hate and I despise your feasts, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And peace offerings of your fattened animals, I will not look upon them. Take away from me the noise of your songs. To the melody of your harps, I will not listen. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an everlasting stream. Who would be excited to receive that message from anyone? Can you imagine? I hate, I despise your feasts. Who here has ever thrown a party? Man, I was going to say, am I it? No one has ever? Anyone ever had a barbecue? Picnic? Just a gathering for no good reason, just come on over and let's hang out. How many of you would be really excited if the guests that show up to your gathering said, I hate this mess. I despise you for inviting me. Now, whose heart has just been blessed? Who is thrilled and excited about this? But you know, it's a little bit different. Because this festival, these feasts, these assemblies that we're talking about here, they weren't just thrown for any reason. God was talking about his holy festivals, his holy feasts, his holy assemblies. He was talking about feasts like the Day of Atonement. He was talking about the religious gatherings that his people were supposed to be getting right with him. Now, why did he hate them and detest them? Why? They had become commonplace. They had become ritualistic. They had become everything that they were not supposed to be. You see, these gatherings were supposed to put humans in a very intimate setting and relationship with a holy God. A God that had created everything and everyone. And here, individuals, mere mortals, would have an audience with that God. It was supposed to be exciting. It was supposed to be encouraging. It was supposed to be people bouncing in their seats, so excited to spend time together with their God. And instead it had turned cold and flat and pretty downright depressing. They went along with their feasts, they went along with their assemblies, but nothing ever provoked any interest or excitement. They gathered and they heard of God, and they talked about God, and they wondered about God, but they never experienced God. Why? They were distracted. They were distracted in so much that they had. As they were sitting there in their best, thoughts of Andrew Jackson and Grant went trickling through their mind. They could smell lunch. They knew fried chicken was in their future. Their attention was everywhere except the reason they were supposed to be there. Even though you offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. Burnt offerings. That savor. You remember? The bull gets quartered, and you just put it over fire at the altar. And that smell, it is so enchanting that if anyone in a 4-block radius from my house throws a ribeye or sirloin on the grill and that lid is lifted for 30 seconds, I know it. There is just something about the way that meat and that fat start to heat up, and the fat begins to burn just a little bit, and that smoke goes up. Oh, and I am that mouse once again. But God says, not even that savory smell will grab my attention. Why? Because mankind is so bent on themselves. God had lost all meaning. God wasn't something special anymore. In fact, are you ready for this? They started seeing the eternal, everlasting, holy, righteous God as their colleague. You know what I mean? Because let's face it, when we go to work tomorrow morning, we will go in and we will put on a happy face so as not to fight all day at work, won't we? It doesn't matter what the person in the next cubicle has done to us all last week. Like, go on vacation and leave us with a ton of extra work to get done. We're just going to put a smile on our face, and we're not going to care, and we're just going to go in, and we're going to push through it, and we're going to smile, and we're going to say all the right things. We're going to try to look like we're doing all the right things, while all the while, we're wishing really hateful stuff on them. Or we're moaning about how hard our life is, and they get to go to Nag's Head for 5 days. All they have to worry about is the tide going to hit their chair. I hope it knocks them over. I really do. Oh, while we do it with a smile, because we don't want to seem like mean people or vindictive people, but our heart is crying out otherwise. You see, this is what they were doing with their God. They showed up to work. They went to temple. And they looked the part. And then they took their seat like they were supposed to. And I'm going to sit here. And I am going to look like I am a wonderful role model for the faith. But I'm not doing nothing. Nope, can't make me do anything more. See, I'm here. Even best, there were those, and it's nothing against the Vosbergs or Brother Rob, but some would sit on the first pew. Because we all know that you have to be pretty right to be on the first pew. Because everyone else hoards to the back. We can get out quicker. First pew folks, they have to talk to the pastor. They can't get away quick enough. But the further back, the better opportunity to escape. And everyone sees those in front of them. So all eyes are now on the Vosbergs and Brother Rob. All the while, these Israelites were coming to temple, and they were looking the best that they could to be God followers on the outside, while on the inside they were just decaying, allowing everything to literally go to hell around them while feeling quite fine in themselves. After all, they're offering up their sacrifices at the appointed time. It is my turn to present a sin offering. It is Sunday, the 10th of July. It is the 10th, right? It is July 10th, 2016, and it is my day to present my sin offering, and there it is. It's right there on the altar, right where it should be, and look at that. Smoke's hitting, flames hitting it, smoke's going up. Everything is right in my life. And now I'm going to go home to my gold-plated remote control, and I am going to kick my dog, and I am going to yell at my kids and my wife, and I am going to make fun and joke about my neighbors, and I am going to write the most vile and hateful stuff all over Twitter and Facebook, and I'll take pictures of the most vile and hateful stuff and place them on Snapchat and Instagram, but I'm good. Because I was in church this morning, and it was my day to sacrifice, and I sacrificed. I did it. You see, this is where they were. They didn't pay attention to anything around them. They didn't care about anyone around them. They were it. God had told them they were the apple of his eye. All was right with them. All they had to do was show up Sunday morning. For a little bit of extra credit, they'd show up at 10:40 because service started at 10:45. They sat there. They had the right clothes. They said the right words. They smiled when everyone came in, even though they wouldn't talk to half the people if they saw them on a Tuesday afternoon. But everything should just be fine, right? Take away from me the noise of your songs. To the melody of your harps, I will not listen. Boy, it is gang up on Brother Vosberg Day, isn't it? You're in the first pew, and then they start talking about music. Can you imagine if God were to stand up, would come to us today and say, I don't want to hear any more out of you. Put away the guitar, sell the piano and the organ. We're not even going to get into keyboards and drums. Take the screens down because you don't have to sing anything. It is all being banished because what you say is not how you live, so we're done. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And yet, that's what God was telling Amos to tell the people. How can the same mouth sing, there is no one like you, God, and then leave and act like there is no God and no one is quite like me? How can it happen? Well, you see, it was happening then. And you started to see it all around the city in very quiet, distinct, just under the surface kind of ways. People were being cheated and manipulated, all in the name of God. Those who were doing the cheating and manipulating, they were all right. They had sacrificed on their day. You know, once a year sacrifice, isn't that good enough? How much more could a colleague expect of me? But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Doesn't that sound good? Let justice roll down like waters. Righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. You know what's scary? I bet every Israelite heard those words and said, "That's right!" But have you ever noticed rolling down water? It's mighty. It's strong. And sometimes it is downright overwhelming. Amos was warning the Israelites that something needs to change now. Because justice will roll down like water. But when God sends justice to roll down, how many of you have a picture of a nice little babbling brook in your mind? That's not God's justice. How many sees that nice little tide coming in from Nag's Head, from Virginia Beach, from insert your favorite beach here? How many see that? That's not God's justice rolling down. Niagara Falls is God's justice rolling down. And we're right there at the bottom of it. When it hits, you know it. It carves away whatever it wants to carve away. Only then can righteousness flow like an ever-flowing stream. You see, streams don't flow nice and gently and softly when there are obstacles in the way. It doesn't matter how clean and shiny the obstacles are. And there were problems. There were problems festering on the inside of the nation that was ready to collapse the whole thing. I remember buying my very first car. I was 19 years old. And the car I had my heart set on was this beautiful 1985 white Trans Am. 19-year-old guy with a nice little sports car that could do way too much in way too short of a time. Whoo, I don't know what my parents were thinking. And I found one. And you know what? I had enough money saved up from all of the birthdays and all of the Christmases and all of the report cards to go out and buy it in cash. And you know what I did? I went out and I bought that car. And boy, did it look good. I bought it and it needed inspected. 3 years old. What problems are there going to be? Now, did I tell you I paid $5,000 for a 3-year-old car? Took it to be inspected. 19-year-old boy, I got my sports car. I got my sports car. Who going to be the envy of the neighborhood? And the mechanic came out and said, we have just a few problems. Okay, what's the big deal? Well, it seems like the entire electrical system is shot. I should have known that. Because the first thing I did when I bought the car is I adjusted to all of my favorite radio stations. And they worked fine until I shut the car off. And then when I started to back up, they had all changed again. Should have picked up on that. And then there was an issue about the car being out of line. And I thought, oh, what's the problem with that? You know, you put it on the rack, straighten it up, no big deal. And then they told me, no, it was more than that. It was almost like the tires were on backwards. They were so bad. And this would require actually taking the car apart and rebuilding axles. And I'm not really a car guy. But they started saying, for about $8,000, we think it'll pass inspection. The car looked great on the outside. Not a chip in that gorgeous white paint. It shined like nobody's business. But it was a pile of junk. But it looked good. And if I just left it parked outside the house and I invited all my friends over, I'd be the envy of the neighborhood. But it wasn't meeting the purpose. I couldn't go anywhere safely in it. Fortunately, I was able to get my money back and return the car. All this happened in a matter of 48 hours. It seems that the vehicle had been wrecked. And insurance had considered it a total loss, but Dad and son thought they could fix it up enough to sell it. And they did. And then it got returned. But you see, something can look fine on the outside and be a real mess on the inside. Destructive, rotten to the core. Israel had reached that point. And you know, this week, as I was flipping through the important stories on my phone, like where Kevin Durant signed in basketball, and then all these other people had to get cut to be able to bring Kevin Durant into that particular team. You know, the really important stuff. Then other things started breaking through. Sometimes crime isn't crime. Sometimes when it's not a crime, people end up deceased. Sometimes we just look the other way because it's too uncomfortable to talk about. But you see, folks, I fear our nation is right here in Amos 5. We're very comfortable where we are. And we've shown up at 10:45 today, and we're in the house of God, and God loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. But our world is collapsing out there. And right now, our society needs us. It needs us to stop talking about individuals and start talking to individuals. It's time we do away with senseless idolatry in our country. Pastor, what do you mean about senseless idolatry? It's time we bring down all of the appearances. Now, I am not saying that one's appearance brings about problems. It should never be that way. But you know what? I remember being a young man once. I know, it was a long time ago. And I was a good young man. 14 years of age, I showed up at First Baptist Church of West Newton, and I did not leave until I graduated high school, or so it seemed. Sunday morning there, Sunday night there, Wednesday night there. If the doors were open, Jack was there. Crazy little Jack. 13-year-olds are supposed to be out. Everyone under the age of 18 do this, because I'm going to talk about you for 30 seconds. 13-year-olds aren't supposed to be these straight and narrow kind of people. Society tells us that they're rebellious, they're teenagers, they're doing crazy stuff. Little Jack went to church. Little Jack, for his study hall, read his Bible. I was kind of odd. But I got away with it because I was also an all-district baseball player. All right, you can unplug now. We're back. But I remember turning 19, and I remember being in college, and I remember having the sports car. And there is an image that must go along with that. You know. I had the right hair. Wasn't this. And now if you look at the pictures, you would say, that's the right hair. But you had the right hair. You had the right walk. You were wearing the right clothes. You said the right things. Because you had to be hip. I also remember in the town where I went to college, when we went into the malls, people followed us. Why in the world would they follow us? Well, maybe it had something to do with the way we kind of strutted in there. No one's going to... Yeah! They followed us. And I remember, now these weren't major hassles, but you know what used to annoy me so much when I was 20 and 21 and 22? Young hotshot. I knew more than everyone, of course, because that's, all the bank of knowledge that an individual ever acquires comes in the years 19 to 21. And you know everything, and no one else knows a thing. And I have this nice, lovely little sports car. It's not a Trans Am, it's just a Formula 350, North Carolina blue with T-tops. Got the picture. Driving home from college because, I like to go visit the parentals every so often. Things need taken care of, like laundry, like next month's finances. We need to take care of these things. It's important, fit the lifestyle. And I'm a night owl. So, when normal people drive home from college, it's only an hour trip. Normal people would leave after their last class, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. They'd drive to wherever they're going. Not me, that's not cool. I need to hang out with my buddies. I'll leave at 2 in the morning, which I would regularly do. 2 in the morning on a Friday night, sports car, T-tops are out. Guy sitting in the driver's seat, just one. You can tell he is not 40. Wearing big fraternity letters, just driving down, going about 3 miles an hour under the speed limit. Because I behaved myself. I was a good guy. That all changed when I got older. Do you know how many times I was pulled over by the police? At least 2-3 dozen times. Seemed like it was a Friday night ritual, and it used to aggravate me to no end. I'm under the speed limit. What's the problem? They all thought I was drunk. 2 in the morning, 20-year-old kid going under the speed limit? He must be up to something in that car. So like every Friday, I'd get out and I'd have to do this little thing and I'd do that. And they'd look at me like, what is your problem, son? You're sober. And I remember I considered that harassment. And I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. Looking back, now that I don't know everything, I understand. Sometimes the image we put forward has consequences. They shouldn't, but sometimes they do. We need to find a way to get past that, folks. There are too many families being gutted and ripped apart by nonsense. Too often it's happening. And I'm not pointing a finger to any one individual or any group, but we need to get beyond it. We need to start talking about some serious community issues to bring us out from where we are. We cannot have our citizens, the citizens of the greatest country on the face of this planet, living in constant fear. Not people driving their cars. Not the police officers who are pulling them over. Not the doctors and lawyers and dentists and shop owners worried about what's going to happen next. And here's where the rubber meets the road. If we don't do it, and by we, I mean us in this room, who will? Perhaps in our lifetime, no one. But eventually God will decide it. You remember his idea of let justice roll down? Or can we just talk with each other? Gather together and see what we can do to make our civilized world civilized. Israel had lost the three most basic tenets that God had used to separate them out: love, obedience, and compassion. Do I dare ask where the United States of America is today with those three characteristics? Love, obedience, and compassion. Not just when we want to. Not just when it's easy. But unconditional love. Unconditional obedience. Unconditional compassion. Around our country, there are people who are hurting. Hurting like I pray you never experience. And my fear is all we do about it is make political statements. Shame on us. For there is a holy, righteous God over top of us, saying, I despise your feasts. I despise your solemn gatherings, because they're not so solemn. I despise your singing praises and love to me when you hate those next to you. But you see, we're fortunate. Because even though all of this rottenness is all around us, there is the opportunity and the possibility to be healed. You know what that healing is? An honest, genuine shot of Jesus. See, that's love. A man has no greater love than this, but to lie down his life for his friends. There's obedience. I do the work of my Father who sent me. There's compassion. He wept. He stood over Jerusalem and said, oh, that I could just bring you under my arms. See, until we become more like Jesus, until we get that kind of power in our lives, we continue to resort to ritual. And you know what ritual does? It means you just show up and you do the same thing again and again and again, sometimes putting absolutely no thought into it. You know what I mean? You know that favorite song of yours on the radio that you sing along to? And have you ever caught yourself saying, oh, I really love that third verse, and you sing through it and you say, did I already sing that third verse? Because it's so common. You know it so well that you're really not engaged. Or perhaps you know it this way. You're taking a trip home. Been on a long trip, and you're just flying down the interstate because I no longer go just 3 miles underneath the speed limit. And you wonder, have you passed exit 56 yet? Where am I? Why? You're too comfortable. You've hit ritual. You know how to get home, and you're on autopilot. My goodness, our country has hit autopilot. And the problem is, there are innocent people on the highway, and we're on autopilot. Because we're losing our love and our obedience and our compassion. Oh, not entirely. We still expect it for ourselves. By golly gosh, you better love me, George. And by golly gosh, Rob, you better be obedient to me. And John, you better have compassion for me. But you, not my problem. Our society needs that shot of Jesus. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about others. And if we just dig in and make our stand in this is right and that is wrong and they're to blame and I'm great, nothing is going to change. And folks, we need a change. And at this point, the only one I know that can do it is our God. But we can begin. We can begin by being obedient and starting the conversations. Not with an agenda, not with something to prove, not to look to cast blame or exonerate, but just talking. And you know what I've learned when I talk to people? That we usually have some common experience. And they're not as bad as I thought they were. And they're not as ugly as I thought they were. And they really aren't out to get me. Usually. And you know what? If your experience happens to be different, that you find out they really are out to get you, you know what you can do? You can pray for them. Bless them. You see, for too long our church, and by our church I mean the church in general, has become ritualistic. And we get excited here, and we have power here, and then we go outside, we forgot everything that's happened, and we go on with life. That's what an unbelieving world finds simply unbelievable. There's no concreteness to what we profess. It's time to change all that. Starting today, won't you start looking out with love and obedience and compassion? As our musicians come, we first want to make sure you know of that love. What to be and who to be obedient to, and how to be compassionate. If you're not sure, we encourage you and we invite you to step out, come on down, let us talk about it. My microphone will be turned off. No one else will hear anything that's going on, but we want to make sure you know the starting point, that we can go out together unified as a force for better.
Please
Won't you
stand.
stand and sing?